Good morning, students. In this class, we are going to discuss the text document of Sir Philip Sidney, which is entitled An Apology for Poetry. This is our second topic in literary criticism. In the previous session, we learnt about Aristotle's The Poetics, its nature and functions. Aristotle says that the poet is an imitator. But finally he concludes that the poet teaches, but he gives pleasure, he gives delight too. So the ultimate purpose of poetry is to delight, and teaching is incidental to the pleasure it gives. See students, Sir Philip Sidney, he stands in between classicism and modernity, modern approaches to literary criticism. Sir Philip Sidney, he replies to the challenges that were made against poetry during his time, and especially his apology for poetry is divided into 5 sections. We are dealing with a few sections here. See, the first part is Sir Philip Sidney praises poetry for its art and craft, because poetry is such a beautiful thing. Its workmanship is so great, so that we are proud of poetry for its art and craft. So it appeals to all people. Poetry with its craft and art appeals to all people. And secondly, antiquity. Poetry, it begins at the very start of human life. It originates at the beginning of human life. When man was born, poetry was also born. When man started thinking, poetry took its shape by his emotions, by his expressions. So, it's too old as man. So, human life, when it started, poetry too started with man's thinking. So with the man's progress, it also progressed. So because of that, Sir Philip Sidney says that poetry is great for its antiquity. Antiquity means it belongs to ancient part of human life. It means it originates when human life started in the past. So that is the antiquity of poetry. And poetry enables a man to read and to understand. Poetry gives understanding to a person. Because of poetry, we undergo many things, many phases. We understand what we are, what others are, what nature is, what human nature is. So it is the best kind of learning for man. So poetry enables us to learn and understand. And coming to one more point expressed by Sir Philip Sidney, the philosophers and historians, they are the born poets. Anybody, any expert, he should be born as a poet first. Then he becomes a philosopher or a historian. That is the greatness of poetry. And coming to universality. Universality means poetry is universal. It appeals to all people, all generations, all age groups. No one is left without getting the appreciation of towards poetry. Even the most uncivilized races in the world, they were made civilized. They were civilized because of poetry. Once they started reading poetry, once they started learning what poetry is, and once they started to read poetry. So it is the highest form of learning. So this nobility of poetry attaches nobility to human thinking also. Human thinking, it goes much far above than anything because of poetry. It makes the person, it makes the man a supreme being, a superior being. Okay, next coming to continuity. Continuity means it has begun at the very start of human life it is continuing now. It is going to continue till the end of everything. So there is no end for poetry. As long as the nature is there, as long as human beings are there, as long as human nature is there, poetry lives long. Poetry is immortal because it is not limited to certain space or age or to certain groups of people. It has its vast spread. It is spreading all over, so that it is a great form of art according to Sir Philip Sidney. So in his apology for poetry, he starts praising poetry as the great art. It has a good craftsmanship. The craft of poetry is so technical. It is so qualitative. So one should appreciate poetry. One should not leave poetry without appreciating. It is such a greatness Sir Philip Sidney attaches to poetry. And coming to antiquity, it was born when mankind started. It originates at the very start of human life. It is still continuing with human life. So antiquity means, though it is the oldest and the earliest form of art, though it preceded all branches of learning, it is still fresh. It appeals to all people with all its different appealing ways. See students, antiquity involves many things. Poetry enables a person to learn and to understand. There are great people in the world, great experts in the world. There are poets, philosophers, historians and psychologists, and there are many experts who had lot of expertise in different branches of learning. But according to Sir Philip Sidney, poetry enables a man to read and understand, and every expert is a born poet. After getting into the role of a poet, a person, he gets the expertise of some other branch of learning. A philosopher is a born poet. Next he is the philosopher. A historian is a born poet. Next he is the historian. This is how Sir Philip Sidney praises poetry. And universality. Universality means poetry appeals to all, everyone. It doesn't leave any section of people. All ages. It has started, it is still continuing. So this universal appeal of poetry is so great. There are nations that were uncivilized once upon a time. After learning poetry, they became civilized. So poetry teaches even civilization also. It gives a civilization. It gives a good life to mankind. Okay, now coming to continuity. It has begun at the start of human life. It is continuing with human life. It will be continuing till end. So there is no stopping, or there is no halt, or there is no pause for poetry. It is continuing. It always continues with human life. In the fifth point, he says that poetry is a speaking picture. Poetry is a speaking picture. Speaking picture. What does it mean? What does it mean? Speaking picture. It's an art. A picture is the art. It's a created art. It speaks many things. So, just like that, poetry can also speak many things. It's like a craft. It's like a picture. It's a creation by man. And it teaches many things. It teaches by the way of giving delight. So, Sir Philip Sidney, in his first session, in his first part, he sums up saying that poetry teaches, at the same time it appeals by giving delight too. So that is the most important aspect of Sir Philip Sidney's theory and principle of literary criticism. His literary text, critical text document entitled An Apology for Poetry. So my dear students, please go through this once again and get in touch with that and try to sum up yourself and you get in touch with this text part of Sir Philip Sidney and learn it. With this I would like to conclude and I will be moving on to next session by Sir Philip Sidney in my next class. Wish you all the best, students. Keep learning. That is very important aspect of learning. For any of your queries, you give your valuable remarks and reviews in the comment section. All of you subscribe my channel and give your valuable remarks. Thank you all. Bye.